Well, good morning. I hope everyone had a good evening. We were talking about rain, possibly here in the Sonoran Desert, which we're excited about. All right, so today we are going to start with that John Muir Laws quote, which I just love, just to remind us what we're doing. Your observations, questions, and reflections, and remember, those are I see, I wonder, it reminds me of, will enrich your experiences and develop gratitude, reverence, and the skills of a naturalist. If you train your mind to see deeply and with intentional curiosity, the world will open before you. And that is literally what we will be doing. So I'm going to set you right to work. Some of you may have already done this, but for the next 15 minutes, I want you to start a page for today, meaning today's metadata, your location, the weather. Hopefully you've got some of those cheat sheets we sent. I resent it by email this morning. So let's take a few minutes. I'm going to swap to my document camera so you can see me doing mine if you want, but certainly don't have to. And there. Grace, we see the journal now?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, everybody, so get to work. Hey, it's August 1st, everybody. I'm always excited when it's the first of the month in my journal.
Roseann, do you always start on the left side of the page?
Nope, I start wherever it's, well, okay, no, that's not true. If I know it's going to be like a really busy day, like Botswana or whatever, where I know I'm going to be like tons of pages and I kind of want a big spread, I'll turn the page. But no, I tend to just fill up page by page. I did this today because my last page, I was doing elephant demos for a class, so I just wanted to avoid that distraction. But you can do it whatever way works for you. I don't use rulers because I'm trying to warm up my hands, so sometimes my lines are wobbly. Actually, those were really wobbly this morning. I'm kind of at an angle because I'm kind of trying to do it so you guys can see. Grace, let me know if there's any question in the chat. I can't quite get to it when I have my screen shared.
Okay, there are none right now.
Okay.
There are a couple questions in the chat now.
Okay, I'm going to switch, see if I can see it. Nope, I can't see the chat. So Grace, if you can hit the questions.
Yeah, so we have, what is the website link for Sun and Moon?
I won't be able to grab that. Maybe Grace can do a search. You can also just use Google if you're in your house. You could just say, Google, when does the sun rise at my location? It's kind of scary, it'll know.
And I'm putting a link in chat on time and date. They have the ability to do that. And then we have another question. The times next to the moon and sun reference what?
Yep, that's sunrise and sunset, moonrise, moonset. It's 95% full. It's going to be full moon on the 3rd of August. So I like to track the moon phase because it does affect some species movements and behaviors. And I put over here kind of a quick sunrise snapshot. It was partly cloudy this morning where I'm at in the east. So I wrote partly cloudy. And then we had a really high low for the location. It was 83.8. And then I leave the little sun over here. We're going to fill that in this afternoon. I'll fill in the high temperature and what the weather is doing. And hopefully it'll be like lots of jagged lightning and clouds. And this symbol is for stratocumulus clouds. It's very light breezes from the northwest. And the circle with this filled in shows how much cloud cover there is. That's total nature nerd stuff. I mean, weather nerd stuff. You don't need to do that necessarily. I'm gonna give it just a few more minutes here. And you can, develop your own way to do the metadata. You don't have to copy me exactly, but if you don't want to worry about it, the grids work. I like the grids because of the line drawing. When you get into sketching and doing a bit more of the drawing parts, it really is a good idea to warm up your hands. It's like stretching before doing running or any kind of exercise. And I'm also getting my hand-eye coordinator going. And you can see it was kind of wobbly over here. That's okay. I'm not, it also breaks the tyranny. So not using a ruler, and I do have a ruler, but not using a ruler breaks the tyranny of perfection, right? So embrace wobbly. Be okay with with things that aren't perfect yet, right? So that really does help me if I'm like, oh, well, it's wobbly, so what? You know, this is life. Life is not perfect, so we're not going to have like a totally perfect page here. All right, is everybody, you kind of, when I say everybody looking up and we're more or less done, we'll go back to So Michelle asked if we could send a link to all the apps. So there's a list of the apps in the materials I sent, but no links. And so later, maybe during lunch, Grace and I will try to get some links or something, but okay. So I hope everyone, you know, kind of got a start. We all pretty much good, yeah. Then I'm going to move on to the next section. So we have plenty of time. Here's where I'm going to bring in the leaf thing, and I'm going to demonstrate for those of you who aren't like never sketched anything. I'm going to demonstrate some tips for the leaf thing, but I wanted you to bring in a leaf because we're going to warm up with drawing something from nature here together, and I want you to take your time and use that leaf nomenclature handout that was in the materials and take notes and describe everything about the leaf that you can. And here's an example of taking notes on a leaf. I measured it, I described how many leaflets were on there, I described the margins, that they were pale veins. So everything that you can summon in your powers of observation, we're going to record. But just to give a quick demo of some tips for those of you who have never done anything like this. So leaves are nice, they don't fly away, and they have some nice simple shapes to them. So here's what I do is, does that show my journal, Grace?
Yes.
Okay, so I went out and I grabbed a nice simple leaf to draw. And how do I start this process to get the kind of this general shape and proportion right without jumping right in? It's kind of scary sometimes. So I'll be introducing this method that I find really easy for tackling things a little bit later, but we're going to do a quick version of it. I do what's called dot mapping. So before I jump in to sketching something, oh, you guys can see the ink on my fingers. Yeah, I got my pen filled, and that's kind of funny. So I use dot mapping. So then when I jump in, I can be more sure of the shape I want to draw. So if this is the shape I want to draw, I'm going to say, okay, well, here's the top, dot. Okay, and here's the bottom, dot. Now this leaf, if I kind of measure it here, more or less, I can see it's 1, 2, maybe 2.5, maybe almost 3 widths wide. So let's dot the width here. I'm just estimating. And then I can say, okay, have I got that right? 1, 2, no, actually it's a little fat for the smallness of it. It's because I'm not doing it to scale. So I'm measuring 1, 2, I'm gonna extend that a little bit. So then I can sort of look at it and I can make some dots to approximate. Oop, I got to get that tip. See, I'm giving myself a guideline, and then I might start sketching very loosely. And if I haven't got it right, I can change it. And I'm not being too worried about absolutely perfect. Let's get this stem thing down here. I've got my center vein. And one thing I want to capture is that this leaf has ever so suggestion of teeth. So I definitely want to get that. It's more smooth here. As I get a little stronger with my pen, I'm going to suggest those teeth. So that's a pretty good representation of that leaf. And now you see the process. Now I might gently sketch in the, this is just got very suggested. It has a strong raised vein here, but the very, very faint side veins. All right, so now I'm going to take notes and stuff, and I'm going to let you guys do your leaves. So if you've never sketched before, try using the dots till you kind of got the shape right, add some sketchy lines, and check your proportions. Just that's one quick and easy way, and I'll be going over this more later, but it's one way to get your measurements is to say, okay, that's 1, 1, 2, 2.5. So we'll go over that more, but just go for it and take notes and use your nomenclature to try to guess what you've got and to describe it. I sent this to you in your folder. Okay. So let's take, what are we taking for that? Let's see. Like 20 minutes. I'm going to turn off the share to give my computer processor a break. So do your leaf. I'm going to do mine. Okay, let's see what we've done. I'm going to show mine because I'm pretty excited. This is a great example of my observation causing me to learn something new about a relatively mundane thing, my tangerine tree. So here's what I did. Can you guys, is that showing, Grace?
Yes.
Thank you. So I took measurements. It's 12 centimeters long, 4 centimeters wide at the widest point. That's how you show that. I wrote that the slight teeth is serrate. I wrote that the other veins were very light. And then here's a little tip you can do. I was studying the whole leaf and then was looking at what's called the petiole, and I originally wrote it as stem down here. Well, this is what I did. There wasn't enough room here, so I did a circle, and it's called like a zoom out, and then I blew it up, and you see my wobbly circle. I didn't go find a stencil to do a perfect circle. And then I drew it, and I because the vein continues down through the leaf petiole, which is the point that connects the leaf to the stem, and it has wings. So I looked it up online real quick and learned something new. This is typical, not all citruses have them, but this is typical of citrus, the winged petiole. And here's something I want to point out. Notice how I made a mistake. I wrote stem. This isn't a stem. The stem is what the leaves are on. So instead of whiting it out or obliterating it, I drew a single line through it. And as field note keepers, nature journalers, this is important because let's say I wanted to read that word much later on. Maybe I actually was right to begin with. I want to be able to read that word. So don't white out things, don't cover over things. Draw a single line through it. This is standard science notes practice. And then write the correct underneath. And then I looked up the genus and species of a tangerine tree, which I had never done. So here's a great example of taking something really mundane, my tangerine tree, which I pass every day, and learning something new because I was observant. I looked instead of just, sorry, I got that backwards. I saw instead of just looked. I look at it every day, but I don't really see it. So I learned something. How cool is that? So we have time for a few shares. Who wants to share something they did and what they discovered? Raise your hand. So Sue, I see you only as SBG, Psy. Ha, got it. So unmute yourself. Unmute, there we go.
First of all, I'm totally psyched about this. I have something else to geek out about. I got up really early this morning and realized leaves are also needles off a pine tree. So I had, there's the metadata, however I did it. But I'm trying to identify these gigantic pine trees out in front of this rental house I'm living in that everybody notices, oh, you're the house of the pine trees. So I went out and picked up a couple needles on the ground because I can't reach it, and came in and measured it, and they were about 2.5 inches long. I could not find it in the tree identification book, and then I realized, well, what if I just randomly picked a short or a long needle? So I went back out, and then I took the little ruler and averaged them out and discovered that actually it was short and they're much longer, but they all come in pairs. So also, the really cool thing about it was that the two sort of come out of whatever that little doohickey is at the bottom. I don't know yet. But the outer edges of the two are really smooth. But if you separate them, the inside flat layer is raspy.
Awesome.
I had never noticed that before. So that was really cool. And then I had to collect the pine cones so I could figure out what it was. So I've identified it's a Virginia pine tree.
Awesome.
Didn't know that, but then I did a regular leaf. And what I wound up paying attention to with my Goulet loop is
we're gonna geek out on that. So after we need to hear about that. So go on.
okay. But I paid attention to the serration because I just look and I just see little jaggedy edges. So I said, okay, what do the edges actually look like? Because I know there are different kinds of serrated edges and I don't know the difference. And I was really fascinated to find that toward the tip of the leaf, the angle away from the body of the leaf is like just a straight line. And then there's that pointy thing. I don't know if you can even see it on here.
Yes.
It's just a straight angle and then the point, but then the part that comes down back to the leaf sort of describes a shape like that. And then it goes a line, point, and then another curved line. So the stem end has a really beautiful little curve to it up to the apex, which is just a little pointy thing. And then it's just a straight angle back down toward the leaf. And then another just beautiful, like a foothill curve going up to the point. So I thought that was really cool. Also, I looked at all the veins and it just basically looks like the human circulatory system. So thank you. I was really totally psyched.
So you can see Sai just completely dropped into a zone of discovery and learned a ton. I just learned a ton by listening to her. Keeping good notes, taking good notes, allowed her to go identify. perfect natural history. So you're a naturalist. That's exactly what a naturalist does. Naturalists don't know everything. We just know how to investigate, learn, and then keep that in our brains. So naturalist doesn't mean you're the expert of everything in the whole world. It means that you are open to knowledge and observing the world and learning about it. Hopefully there's no end to what we will learn as naturalists. There is no end. I learn something every single day. I just learned about winged petioles on citrus. And I've been a professional naturalist for 40 years. So who else wants, let's see, I had, trying to see who else shared. I think, who else wanted to share that you guys raised your, Carol, you raised your hand exactly the same time as Sai. So Carol's going to share. And if a little tip here, if you want to make sure, if you don't have it set up, when someone's speaking, make sure you have speaker view clicked, and that way when Carol starts talking, you can see her page.
I did mine just on lined paper right now because my notebook got wet this morning, but I got a milkweed leaf, and it's lanceolate. It's an entire, and it's a reticulate vein pattern, which means it's a network, and it reminds me of the Fibonacci number, the sequence.
That is so cool.
I put that little formula up.
Okay, can you explain that to the group in case they're not totally geeked out on Fibonacci yet?
If you look at the vein on the leaf, and it's sort of like a shell pattern where two lines in the next vein, it will be the sum of that. And so it gets bigger, but it's very mathematical.
So Grace, can you quick do a Google and get us a good link for Fibonacci number and the golden mean?
Yes, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Leonardo da Vinci was big on this too. It's been in art for a very long time. And those of you with more science backgrounds and mathematical backgrounds will recognize this incredible number that when compounded, it's so hard for me to describe it. We don't have time to go into it, but definitely look into it. You'll see Fibonacci sequences in the way trees grow their leaves. You'll see it in agave and aloe plants. You'll see it in pineapples. It's in almost everything. It's pretty fabulous. So thank you. That was wonderful. Okay, keep on going. We just
the two preceding ones.
Hold up your sketch of the Fibonacci sequence. So that's what that represents. See the 0, 1, so 0, and then 1, 1 equals 2, 2, 3 equals 5, 3, 5 equals 8, 5, 8 equals 13, and it's an expanding number forever. And if you draw circles, there's spirals in those squares, you get, it's an amazing relationship. So Google that. We don't have time now, but thank you. And then also, Sai, if you could share that loop, that was a really cool, thank you, Carol. That was awesome. Wonderful. Sai, that loop is super cool for studying. So can you show that to the group again?
It's a lighted loop. Regrettably, it's battery powered, but you use it mostly for checking your nibs, but it works great for this, and I needed the extra light.
I like the light because often I use, let me show you what I've got. I've got I'm gonna reach down and get it, an old school thing. This is my old school magnifier. It's just a simple jeweler's loop. It's nice and small, but sometimes it is too dark. I can't see things. And you have to hold it quite close, where that you don't have to hold it quite so close. So, all right, that's awesome. So that was from Goulet Pens. Kathy, you have a question, or you want be sure to unmute?
I'm unmuted. I figured this out. Okay. Well, I thought I would be a little bit difficult for myself, and I have a fern leaf. So here it is. But I didn't do that whole big one. I just took a little part of this. And before my homework this morning was to try to learn some vocabulary about ferns, because they have all their own vocabulary. And all I got was, I have a lot more questions, because these are called twice bipinnately compound. So I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, hold it
Right
there. Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
so there's all my questions. There's your leaf. And then the back side was very fascinating, because not every leaf, but on many of my fern leaves, I have something called sorus, S-O-R-U-S, and they're a type of spore, S-P-O-R-A-N-G-I-A, sporangia. So there was just like, you could just delve into a lot about this. And I wanted to show you guys this little magnifier I have, which it's a Belomo. It's spelled B-E-L-O-M-O. It's called a Belomo triplet, and I like to look at moss, so I use this for that, because you can't identify moss unless you look at it extremely up close, because otherwise it just looks like everything looks the same, a bunch of green stuff. So anyway, that was the fern. I guess I'm going to be working on that today if I can get outside. It was raining 2 inches so this morning.
Well, that was perfect. So everybody noticed that what I wanted to demonstrate with the leaf thing is that it's not always about epic. In fact, most of the times, it's not always about going to epic, amazing places. You don't have to go to Yosemite or Botswana or someplace exotic to make discoveries. It's and go down a rabbit hole. So Kathy's got this amazing project now of learning about, it's one thing, ferns, but it's huge. And it's right in her backyard. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate with this whole process of, don't think it has to always be exotic and amazing, because your yard is amazing. Your house plants, your cat, as long as you don't let it outside so it kills birds. So I love cats, but they're killing machines. So just amazing learning experiences going down these rabbit holes with very simple things. And then just by seeing and paying attention, studying, and the sketches help. So who found that sketching really helped you focus on what was in front of you? And how about people who'd never sketched before? So someone who's never sketched before, I'd love to hear from you. Someone who wants to do it. No, everybody's like, Martha, go for it. Unmute.
So I had this leaf from my oak leaf hydrangea and thought it was a very beautiful leaf on that side. But as somebody else just mentioned, the back side, I almost wish I had started with that, because it was so fascinating to see everything on the back. So for mine, you know, I'm happy with it.
Absolutely, you know, fabulous.
It's fine. And I tried to do a couple of things on the one side. I tried to put the little, whatever you just called those that I've forgotten already, sorry.
The serrations.
That's it, the serrations. And then on the other side, I tried, but it was very hard, and I need one of those magnifiers y'all got to show just the complex pattern that was in there. So yeah, that's what I did. I hope we
That's
tried to-
fantastic. So I've noticed, like with Martha's and several others, that I love how, if you're just going to do a quick sketch, which is what I was kind of forcing you to do, don't try to do the whole thing. I like how, Martha did the outline, but then to do your detail, focus in on one section and just fill that in. I actually think it looks cooler and is much more interesting and leaves more space for writing on it. And, I know somebody said, as an artist, you're like, I don't want to write on my art. So this helps you remove it. It's a sketch. It's not a drawing. You're not going to turn it into something you're going to hang on your wall, but it's by making it more sketchy and you're giving yourself permission to use it a different way. So don't be afraid to do that. So, well, I'm going to go into the next section, which is now we're going to talk about more of these quick tips for adding sketches and things, because I think it's just really good for us to jump in and do the sketching. As you noticed, just doing a leaf, you can do it if you focus on shapes and some simple tips for how to get what you see onto paper. So I'm going to, are there any questions so far? No? Okay. So I'm going to pop over to the presentation again. Now, I'm going to give you some more tips how you can quickly jump to sketching plants, which we just did. Even animals, because you can break them down into just shapes real quickly. And what John Muir Laws calls landscapitos, which are little landscapes, which are really fun to put in your journal. They're quite satisfying to sketch, and they don't have to be scary. You can do it. And I'll be demonstrating kind of how we do this, but let's just jump in. I'm not going to do color today. So I kind of developed this multi-part process, and from various other sketchers and people, especially Mark Taro Holmes. Maybe Grace, if you could write this in the chat for me, please. It's Mark, M-A-R-C, Taro, T-A-R-O, and then Holmes. Google him. He's a great teacher for this type of quick sketching. He's an urban sketcher, but everything applies. So this is where I kind of learned this ideas from him. So you're capturing, you're not copying. Let's just keep that in mind. Try to capture shape, feeling, what you want to remember about the little landscape or the animal. So when you look at a landscape or even an animal, and I'll demonstrate that too, in your mind, you want to be, and this is what I'm showing on the screen, in your mind, you want to be looking for the big shapes. You don't want to obsess about, oh my gosh, there's so much detail, I'm never going to get that. These, I've outlined the major shapes, the foreground, the middle ground, and then the big rocks. And that's it. Big shapes. So capture, not copy, find the big shapes. And then what I do to get started, so it's not quite so scary, is I index with the dots. I call it dot mapping. And I got this idea from Mark Holmes, and I'm sure, he got it from someone else. Nothing's new in art. We borrow from each other. So I dotted out my major shapes until I was happy with the proportions. And I'll be talking in a minute about measuring proportions so you can more or less get them right. And I do the dots, and then I just do messy lines, literally connecting the dots. See, I'm not being precious. I'm being really sketchy. Sometimes I'll even leave the pen or the pencil on the paper and not pick it up, kind of like contour drawing, they call it, but I'm looking at my subject and my paper. contour drawing, there's blind contour drawing where you try to do it where you're not looking, and that's just an exercise. We're not worried about that here. Connecting the dots, and then the more you scribble and kind of sketchy, you're breaking that tyranny of perfection, right? But you're also, I think, messy, squiggly lines are more energetic and interesting than a perfect cartoony like outline. However, if you really enjoy that kind of cartoon, just very, very spare, do it that way. Again, there's no rules. This is how I do it. I'm not saying this is the only way. So remember that. So here's an example. I was down this winter. We had some great rain this winter, which is why we're having a good fire season, because there's lots of growth. But and I wanted to capture that my local creek, the Rito Creek, was flowing. And if you look at the picture, you're like, you know, that would be, you could get kind of scared, like, oh my gosh, this would be really, really hard to draw. So yeah, it would be kind of scary to like, oh my gosh, there's so much to draw. But there's basically only 6 shapes in here. Can you see my mouse when I do that?
Yes.
Okay. So there's the foreground triangle. There's a kind of a rectangular thing of the creek. There's maybe 2 shapes here, but you could do it as 1. The mountain shape and the cloud shape. And that's all I focused on. And a few lines to darken the mountains so they recede, just squiggly representations for the bushes. I left out buildings and power lines, so you can do that when you sketch. And just added a few little squishy plants in the foreground and left it at that. Too much detail would really wreck these kind of quick sketches. So you're capturing the shapes. And I think it worked pretty well. All right, so let's look at this idea of big shapes. So I'm showing a building because that's very shape oriented, but it's a good thing to look at. There's really only like 4 big shapes here with 2 smaller shapes. And that's what I focused on. And then for looking at proportion, so before I would draw that mission, I would double check the width of those 2 segments of the front of the building. And the way I do that is literally that you've seen that thing where they hold the pencil up, an artist holds the pencil up and squints. Well, it's a great way to measure something. And all I'm doing is I'm holding my pencil up, my pen, let's say, and I'll close an eye and I'll, the mission's in front of me, and I'm going to mark with my thumb how wide the part on the right is. And then lo and behold, hey, even though there's a bit of you might convince yourself that it's narrower on the left, it's not, it's the same. So I know when I'm doing my shapes to make those 2 shapes basically the same size. That's just a really quick and dirty way. Then down when I'm sketching it on my paper, I know the proportions. And you do that with a lot of different things. Let's look at it on that feather, because feathers are fun to sketch. And in a lot of places, you really shouldn't collect feathers. I'm guilty, I love feathers, but it's against the law of the Migratory Bird Act. So we can sketch feathers. So let's look at how do I figure out the proportions to make sure this feather is the right proportions on my page. I measured the center of across the feather, using my pen and my thumb. And then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can't quite see. Yep, 6 widths long. So when I sketch it in my notebook, I make sure that when I do my dots, I double check the width and that it's 6 long. Does that make sense? And if I were going to draw those acacia trees, I would dot it out and check my proportions the same way. How tall is the tallest one? And then how wide do I want to make the sketch in my notebook? So really quick and dirty way to just check your proportions and do your dot map so that works. It works on animals too. So I sketched this mule deer at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum live, and it's my favorite kind of animal. She was lying down and not running away. So easy to sketch, right? And I wanted to capture the fact that her ears were constantly like moving, doing this, you know, she's a deer, right? What's she doing? She's looking for predators. Well, actually, in this instance, she was listening for whether she was going to get fed or not, but we'll pretend she's a wild deer and she's listening for predators. So let's look at how I did it though. Shapes. I started with her rear end, just a crude circle and then another circle. And I wanted to make sure, so first I dot mapped her, sorry, some dots to kind of get that. And then I checked, did some circles at the bottom. And then I started measuring, okay, so her ears are a good thing to measure for proportions because her ears are really big. So I used that to sort of, oh, well, she's like her ear is as wide as her neck there. So she's got a pretty skinny neck. And then I just checked all the other proportions. I checked those ears twice because I was like, wow, that seems really big, but mule deer ears are huge. So really, she was only a few shapes. 2 ovals, rectangle for the neck, triangle for the nose, and 2 ovally things for the ears. And you sketch those in really fast. And then you go over it like you saw me do with the leaf and add more detail. And voila, you can draw animals. I try to approach birds the same way if I can, you know, see them for long enough. Sketching live, quickly moving animals is an advanced art skill. So don't push yourself with difficult subject. I've been trying to tackle the coyotes, not tackle the coyotes, but to draw the coyotes at the Desert Museum for years now, and I'm still not that great at it because they move so much. They're just trot, 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 trot. And so I keep trying. So I get some decent ones, I get some really bad ones and go from there. But it's really all about shapes. We did elephants last week in Botswana on my virtual safari. And I showed people how to just, you know, the elephants are just a couple of circles, triangle for the long, triangle for the trunk, and some rectangles for the legs. And you get those basics in lightly, and then you can add the details as you go. And believe it or not, it works. It absolutely works. So I'm going to do some demos here. I'm going to do live demo of Landscapeito, I think, and show you that process of finding shapes in a complex landscape, because they're fun to do, but they can be really daunting. So I'm going to switch over here and can move a couple things around. Let's see. Check the time. Perfect. Okay. Grace, could you please give me, sometimes I drop in, so sometimes when I'm sketching, I actually drop into my nature journaling zone. And once when Grace I was like doing this really intently during a workshop, and I dropped into my zone, and when Grace like spoke to ask a question, I jumped about a mile. I don't know if you saw that time, but I was like, whoa, because I was in my zone. So Grace, if you can, it's okay to scare me if there are questions, but I want to be wrapped up by about 10:45 so we can have questions and answers. So don't let me go too long.
Okay.
Okay, let me swap to my camera here. Ah, did that pop up right away?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. All right. Actually, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to draw Cave Creek Canyon. And this is the Cave Creek in Portal, Arizona in the Chiricahua Mountains. And so I wanted to, first I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, pretty daunting landscape. You want to get a quick sketch in your journal. So how do we do that? Well, I'm just going to go back to that quick shapes again. I want to look for the major shapes and dot map them real quickly and then go for it and not worry too much about being really precious. So I'm going to make this a little smaller so you can see. And I'm probably going to zero in on kind of that section there, maybe even a little more. Okay. All right. All right. Move this. So what I'm going to do, one of the best ways and easiest ways, Grace, you've seen the split screen now with the
Yes.
half and half. Okay, good. So here I am, I'm doing my nature journal. Easiest way to do your little landscapito is give yourself a bounding box first. And sometimes I do partial bounding boxes. This time I'm gonna just do a full one. I might use the ruler, I might not. But what I'm gonna do is isolate those big shapes and only do part of what I'm seeing and not worry too much about exact, right? I want to capture, I'm not copying. So I'm gonna kind of index what part of I'm gonna grab this section of the rocks up here, and I want to sort of index how much they're gonna take up of my landscapito. So I'm also gonna go ahead and dot out this big foreground tree. And I think I want to include that dead tree, which is kind of interesting. And so I'm going to do some quick dots of that, just very lightly. And then I want to leave a little bit of sky. So I'm eyeballing the proportions here. I'm not getting too precious yet. And then the larger, I'm just going to bring in this larger one on the far end here. You see how I'm just using the dots to get what the basic shapes. And I can you can see those dots more or less. There's a big tree right there. I want to make sure I'm going to get. And then I'm going to lightly I'll probably do one more in the background. And then there's a interesting pine tree triangle shape right there. I'm going to leave that for now. So where do I start? I think what I'll do is start with the foreground, and I'm going to just be really loose and sketchy here. And this juniper-y thing, I just want to get a really I'm just getting a representation here. I'm not going to go for super detail. I might even color this in later. And then let's get this this dead tree sketched in here real quick. Got something covering the tree there. Okay, good. We've got one branch going up. I'm trying to capture, not copy, so I'm being very loose and sketchy right now. I want to capture the feeling of this, not an exact copy. And so I'm really just kind of dancing my pen along here. I'm not trying to be super. Now I'm going to sketching in this kind of the shrubs behind it, but I want to make them fade more into the background. And then there's that. I thought the pine tree was kind of interesting, so I'm going to get just a very sketchy representation. It's actually another little one in there. Maybe do that one a little bit lighter. There, I'm going to leave that for a minute because you can really overdo things here. Now, about the background and the rocks, I'm going to give myself the base of the cliffs here, and I'm going to give it really rough to show its trees. And not going to do too many straight lines here. And now I'm going to go in and just really, really roughly get my cliffs. There's one, it kind of comes down. This shape goes up here. I think I'm going to pull that into like three and a half shapes. And then there's this one that comes up and has kind of it's almost like a little butte. And that you can see tree shapes there. And to give the interest here, I'm just going to do some really rough squiggles to show the rocks. I'm not going to get real detailed. Some shadow there. Going to show kind of shadowy side there. I'm going to leave that for the moment and then work on this big triangle shape here. I need to move it over. It's not quite right. I'm editing this down here because I didn't go all the way over. And then there's a few shelves here that come down. And I want to show these striations. And then I'm going to kind of loosely sketch in the the plants. Now over here, I want to show kind of that there's a little bit of topography coming over, but I'm not going to try to sketch all these individual plants. I think that would muddy it up a little bit. I'm going to show a few of the extra rocks in here, but I'm keeping it fairly simple. And I think I'm going to leave it there for now and maybe darken part of this tree a little bit here. Because it's an interesting detail. There. And for now, I think I'm going to leave this. See, I didn't quite get the proportion right there, but that's okay. And you know, I could overwork this until it's just like really not very good. That's really fast and really rough sketch. And we might go in and I'll show you tomorrow how we might color that and add more shadow. Oh, I forgot a section. So there's actually a, way in the background is a little bit farther away. So on this background, I want to keep that fairly, I just want, I don't want it to pop out too much. So I'm going to push it in the back. Maybe that's not what it really looks like in the photo, but I want it to show that it's farther away than these elements here. If that makes sense? So we get a sense of that being farther away. So that's how I would do a really quick landscape ito. And I'll have time for probably another quick demo, but wanted to see if there were any questions. So let me go ahead and unmute and let's see what you guys thought about that, if that's something that worked for you. Any comments on quickly capturing a landscape that way?
Roseann, it's Marty. One of the things that I really appreciated about the way that you showed us drawing, and I find it really difficult, you seem to be good at it, is talking and drawing at the same time. Because I lose my words when I drop into that zone. But what I really appreciate is the way that I'm guessing that the way you talked out loud to us is what you do inside as well. And I think that that's a meditative sort of really being in the moment way of doing this that, I don't know, I mean, I teach high school students, so they seem to want to chat with each other about nothing as they're drawing. And I try to get them to understand that they should be having the dialogue in their head that you just expressed to us. And that was really wonderful to observe. I really just wanted to make that comment.
Fantastic, thank you. Because yes, actually I had to learn to do that for teaching this way, because I found it really useful when people would share their thought processes. I've watched dozens of artists give demos where they're not talking about what they're doing and they're just expecting you to watch and understand the choices that they're making, especially when it comes to color or anything else. Like I'll try to talk when I'm doing the color about, you know, well, I'm adding a little bit of this color to make it warmer, or this or that, and why. And so yes, I was really bad at first. It was very hard to talk and do it at the same time, and I would get flustered, and so it took a lot of practice. So I'm glad you noted that. We have a question about the flexible nib. Is that showing the page again, Grace?
Yeah, just the page.
Just the, okay, so with a fountain pen nib, they're split, and this is a great pen. I love this pen. This is the Lamy, Lamy Safari. I like it just for the name, but it's got a really good, strong, flexible nib that is really has a broad range of marks you can make. So everything from teeny tiny stipply dots. Let me get that to, oh, if I went the wrong way, I'm getting them. There we go. There we go. All right. Stipples, you can get little teeny tiny stipples. You can get whiskery fine lines. You can do shading, or you can do really firm lines, big lines. So I'm a minimalist. I like to just carry one thing. So for me, it's a pen, and I have got all this flexibility for what I can do with a pen, which is why I really do like the fountain pens. And apparently I'm out of ink as well in my other pen. So, and I wasn't able to fill that. I'll get that going when we have lunch break. So any other, oh, spell the name of the pen. Yeah, let me pop that in. So Lamy, it's a French brand. Safari is the model. And I use it's a fine nib. Because they come in fine, medium. I found medium was way too blorky. So someone this morning mentioned, was it Kat? I don't know if this wasn't Kathy or Carol. Someone said their pen was smearing in the rain. Who got rained on? Carol? Yeah. So what pen were you using in the rain this morning?
It's Lamy Safari, but it's the medium nib.
It might be the medium nib puts out a lot of ink, and so it takes longer to dry. And then if you're in a humid environment, it's going to take a lot longer to dry. Like you saw what I just drew, that big fat line just smeared if I touched it, but the light lines, they're not smearing, but it's really dry here. So if I were in England, or where you are, you're in Illinois?
Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to take longer to dry. So you want to keep that in mind. So, you know, a waterproof ballpoint pen or those uniball pens might be better if it's really wet.
Okay.
So the ink that, yeah, so I'm using, it's Platinum Carbon. Platinum is the brand. Carbon is the color / type. It's the permanent ink. So for those of you who want to geek out on this stuff, there are two types of inks. There's pigment-based ink and there's dye-based ink. And this ink, and the other inks I was recommending are pigment-based, which are the permanent, and then they can be rendered waterproof through another process. Dye inks are less expensive and they don't tend to be permanent or waterproof. And so that that's something, you know, if you're going to really get into this, that you want to look into for your archival purposes. But once the platinum ink dries, I can watercolor over it, no problem. It won't smear. There's also techniques that people do by using water-soluble ink, which is entirely fun to do. If I used a water-soluble pen, which I don't know if I've got one to hand here, but let's see if I can demonstrate something, what the difference is. Okay, so if I grab my water brush, so I can demonstrate. Let's see if I can do this. So the waterproof ink will still run in water if I put it on there right away. Let me see if this pen will work. Hopefully this is water soluble. So let's say I'm doing the mule deer. Just doing that from memory. And I wanted to get some shading in here. If this is water soluble, yes, good. If I run my brush over it, I can instantly create shadow and interest, which is just kind of fun. Let's see, so she's gonna have like a jaw there. And she has a kind of a white nose, so I don't wanna do too much. Anyway, that's the difference between water soluble and permanent ink. So if I go up here, that's not doing anything because it's now dry. Same within here. So I can go in here and add color and this won't bleed. So that's permanent. So that's just kind of a fun tip. If you do use a water soluble pen, you can use it to instantly add shadow and shape. So any questions, comments on that? No, let's see more. Oh, thanks for putting the Goulet pens in there. Okay, so for your assignment, let's go over what to do for your assignment. And if I have time, we'll see about any other quick demos I can do. But I think that, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I can show you a couple examples. But for your assignment now. All right. So for your assignment, so you're going to have 2 hours. Have your lunch during that time. Spend a minimum of an hour somewhere out in your backyard, the balcony. Like I said, though, if you can't, find some place online. I can put some sample links if there's anyone you can ask me after we break. And work on your pages. Continue on where you left off with your leaves. Just spend a good hour is what I would recommend, using all that we've learned so far. So you got your metadata already. So now focus on, I want you to try written. So do some prose. That's a great way to start it out. Describe everything you can around you of what's going on. Be observant. That's a good way to drop into the zone. Try a visual, sketch more leaves, zoom in, sketch a detail of something, draw a box or a circle. Try some numerical, count how many hydrangeas there are or something. Think of something to quantify numerically. Don't forget to engage all of your senses. Don't forget to ask questions, and don't forget to see and not just look. I can show examples. I'm going to show some page examples of sort of what I've done and some more of the sketching as well, and ideas for what you might tackle. So I'm going to pull some journals over here. Let's see. Get some good pages here.
Roseann, could you tell us the kind of paper that you like?
Sure. Let me write that in the chat before I do this share. So hold on.
Thank you.
And I like this paper for a couple of reasons. It's inexpensive compared to, say, like, it's watercolor paper, which can be really expensive. So if you get a big brand like, my brain just. Arches, thank you. I'm like, it starts with an A. Arches, really stupid expensive. You don't want to get a bunch of sheets of that. So it's B paper, BEE paper. And it's been hard to get over the last 6 months, but it's coming back now. And they make they make pads bound, but they also sell it in 9x6 sheets and then bigger sheets that can be cut. You can actually take paper to like Office Depot or a printer and ask them to cut it for you. They'll charge a fee for the cut. And they'll even drill it for you too, if you have a binder system. But I really like the B paper, and they do make pre-bound journals that a lot of people really like. It's 100% cotton, and I love the way it behaves. I couldn't get it all through COVID, so I ended up getting this paper. Beware of anything that you get that seems like a great deal, because it was advertised as 100% cotton, and it's not. There's no way. It's crap paper. It feels like those cheap paper towels you use in industrial places, that awful, and it doesn't take watercolor well. I think I was just thoroughly, it's the only 9x6 paper I could find. Anyway, because of COVID, and I couldn't take it places to get it cut, and I don't have access to great art stores in Tucson. None of them were open anyway. So just beware that paper does make a difference, especially when you're starting watercolor. If you use cheap paper, it could really sabotage. So if you are wanting to do color and you're using really lightweight, inexpensive paper and you're struggling, that's why. Same with, we'll talk about good quality paints on Sunday, tomorrow. And I advocate for better quality pigments, fewer of them, than buying a gigantic, inexpensive watercolor, because the cheaper paints are often a lot of chalk and filler, and you get crappy, ugly colors if you try to blend them. So I'm always more interested in saying, get a few expensive colors, good colors, professional grade. You'll be a lot happier, and you'll actually find more success. And so it's the same with paper, the same with pens. You don't need a ton, one pen or one pencil. A number 2 pencil does great. So I can give I'm going to show just a few examples of how you might approach what you're doing today, but do your own thing. Don't just try to just open your mind and let it flow. I managed to grab one that has a Fibonacci. So I noticed that sunflower composites, I noticed that I zoomed into the flower here, and I noticed they're growing in a spiral, like Fibonacci-like spirals. Really cool. The little tiny flowerets. So metadata, prose, a sketch of something that interested me. I noted something about the older blooms turned color, and then I tried to capture the brittle bush colors. Not doing color today unless you're already there. That's great. So here's another example of, I did a map. You could do a map of your backyard from a top view. So lots of different views. So you could zoom out and do a sketch of your yard or wherever you are. And that's a really fun way to represent something. I made lists of birds because Portal, the Chiricahuas is like a super birdie area. And you can see one of the ways I did the sketch of that, Cave Creek. So this is what it looked like colorized, and another way to do it and zoom in. So again, kind of a narrative, lists, the creek is running, landscapito. I wrote the name of the lichen because there's these really pretty lichens on the rock. Great example. So here it rained on me as well. So I got spatters, and just see, there's just nothing, like I didn't plan this page, it's just like taking tons of notes. I drew a juniper seed, identified it later, and there I just kind of stuck in a leaf I wanted to do. This is a live deer. Not a great sketch, but enough. I was pretty more or less happy with her because she zoomed off pretty quickly. And then I did a study of oak leaves because there's so many different oaks. So I drew each leaf and took really careful notes out of my field guide. So there's another way to approach it. You can zero in on one thing. Fantastic way to record what you're seeing. So you might consider that as well. You're probably wondering, what are these? So this is a way that I picked up a brochure and I cut lines in my journal so that I could stick it in there and it would not fall out. There. So that's one thing you can do. See, this is all prose. And then I took notes on what rattlesnakes, endangered rattlesnakes are there. So no drawings here, but still really interesting. So these are just lots of different ways to approach what you can do. Oh, here's just one more thing. I got a little geeky here. This is all, see, this day or this morning, I went, again, pretty much prose. I got more rain. I was sketching the saguaro, did some measurements, and then I tried to represent a sonogram of the rock wren. It didn't work very well, but I'm going to keep trying because the rock wren has a 3-part call song with the call and then the buzzy trills. It was really hard to do. But again, I was trying to do a visualization of data in a new way. So I might work on that. Your bird field guides often have sonograms that you can play with. So I think I'll stop there because it's time for you guys to head out. But I hope that gives you some idea of, like, not every page is always the same. It's just it's a continuum of discovery. Your nature journal is never ending. You're not trying to, I see a lot of people on the forums saying, oh, I went back home and it took me weeks to finish my page, meaning, it's like really, really perfect. Just every day, every page should be a continuum of discovery. And don't worry about perfect finished stuff. It's great to go back and finish your drawings and stuff, but don't worry about design and stuff at this point. You saw how that was just an organic process for me on a couple trips. So any questions? All right, well, so I'm going to leave this open. And if you want to come back in, Grace, you don't need to hang around. I'll just leave mine open, and anybody wants to come in can. I'll go out and refresh my drink. But so enjoy your field, and we'll see you all back here in whatever 2 hours is for you.
Had been collecting samples from parks, just things lying around in the parking lot and stuff like that, and decided just to try to sketch something and to see all the parts of it. Can you see it? Now? Yeah,
That's better.
Nice.
Perfect, right there.
okay. And what I thought about is, what I realized was how little I know technically, as I'm not a naturalist. And so I spent, time trying to, I have a couple of apps, trying to identify it, got a wide variety of identifications, and I still don't know which one's the right one. But it was just such a pleasure to ask myself questions about why that seed pod is connected with these little tiny fibers to a little node in the twig. And if I can ever identify what it is, then I can learn more about that. But it was just such a pleasure. And I did get to go out for a little while, but then it started raining again.
Oh, wonderful. So with the identification, sometimes plants can be difficult. Sometimes you have to have a flower to identify, or leaves, or both. So, don't get frustrated if you can't come up with, look online so most areas have on Facebook, usually they have botanical groups or natural history groups for your region. They're private, so you have to ask to join. But like in Southern Arizona, we have one, Southern Arizona plant aficionados or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And you can post, you can post your sketch or a photo and say, hey, could somebody help me? Do you know what this is?
Yeah.
I wouldn't start there. I would caution everybody to do as much learning on your own as possible so you develop as a naturalist. If you immediately just ask somebody for an identification, you're not really learning because it won't stick in your brain. So same with using, there's these magic apps, like there's one called iSeek, which is tied to the iNaturalist, and you can actually take a picture of something. And if it's a good enough picture, this app will identify it. And it's really scary because you don't have to think. So
well, that's good to hear.
It's good.
It's good to hear. To be in a place of mystery and wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to be in a place of just wondering before I get to the have to know all about it kind of thing.
That's great. It looks like you took lots of really good deep notes, which is the key.
Yeah.
And did you find yourself like really just focusing in and getting into that
time
zone?
just flew. It just flew. It was so amazing, that you're just in it. Like
until
in
it started
flow.
raining.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Who would like to share their experience and page? Or you could just talk about your experience. You don't have to show your page if you don't want to. Kathy, don't forget your mute.
Did I do it? Yes, I did it. Okay. Well, I sat outside on my little porch with a chair that made me too low, so I couldn't exactly see over my deck railing, which was kind of a problem. But I made the best of it, and it did start raining while I was working. I worked in a pen, and you know I usually work from all pencil because I like to change stuff around, but I worked in pen, and I took a bunch of notes, what birds I was seeing. Can you see this or no?
Up, it's good. Great,
Yeah,
great.
that's that side, and then this is this side, because this side got a little bit more about plants I was seeing, because well, I had written down a whole description of the weather and what I was hearing and all the birds at my feeder, but recently I had learned that for many years I thought I had black-eyed Susans in my garden, and everyone has these lovely yellow, dark yellow flowers with the, at least in the Midwest you do, with the raised brown centers. And I visited another person's garden in another part of the state recently, and she said, no, those are not. So then we had to look this up. But anyway, I learned they're called Sylvans coneflower, Sillivants, and they're totally have their own characteristics. And after taking lots of pictures with my phone, the leaf shape and the little hairs, I said, yeah, that is what it is. So there's a lot more plants in the Rudbeckia family. So it just takes a little deeper digging to know what those things are. But I learned a couple of words. One is an A-C-H-E-N-E, achene. Have you heard that word?
Mm-hmm.
You have. Well, I didn't. This was a new word for me, and I realized that the flower has the center part is going to become all these achenes, which will be seeds. The seeds. That's
Very
right.
cool.
So that was my new word, and I love to always learn something new from this and what we do. So, thank you.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. Love that. Hold your pages up one more time to sort of give us a little.
Okay, so here's.
Yeah, that's perfect. Oh, I love the little bird silhouette. And then
Yeah, and I
fantastic.
Some birds I could hear, and then some I could see. Can you see that? Then there's the flowers, and these are your paints, by the way, which I find so perfect.
Great.
Because you don't, yeah, your little paint set is so perfect because you're not going to mess around trying to figure out lots of different colors. You just know the blue plus the yellow is going to make a green, and you can darken it or lighten it, and it's just a perfect little paint set. So if you have,
Yay.
I'm going to put that forward. I just love that little set. So thank you.
Oh, that's great to hear, because yes, I try to focus on not spending so much time, if like my English friends say, faffing around with stuff, and you know, faff. You're like juggling things. If you just boom and it's done. So that's fantastic. That's just one way to do it. So great.
Thank
Yay. Who else wants to? Michelle. I got Michelle and then Christine after Michelle.
So I cheated a little bit because it's really hot here. I tried to go outside. But I've been doing, I'm writing a series on buffalo grass and fire right now. So that's kind of on my brain. And I don't draw and I don't paint. So I was like, I'm going to do my first watercolor with a picture that I found. And I also found out my ink runs. So I probably need to get new ink. But this is what.
Hold it a little closer. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, now back a little bit.
So I wanted to capture like how buffalo grass is just like a blanket and it's choking the native plants. And then I tried, I don't know, this is probably not great, but I tried to do a little bit of the rachis and the seeds.
That's perfect. I like that. I like your overview and then micro view.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah. And that's good, because identifying buffalo grass is important to look at the seed head. Although it's pretty damn obvious, but not for someone who's not from here. So tell people a little bit about buffalo grass and why we don't want it in the Sonoran Desert.
Yeah, so buffalo grass was introduced as like erosion control and cattle feed. And what's happened is it's so good at propagating. So it's almost everywhere now. And it's the fire regime for buffalo grass is it burns hot and quick and it burns often. Whereas in the Sonoran Desert, you know, it's kind of like the plants are little islands, and they'll, if there's a fire, like a lightning strike, it'll burn, but then it won't catch and go to the rest of the area. So we're really worried. I mean, this is the biggest threat to the Sonoran Desert right now is buffalo grass and that carrying, you know, sweeping fire. And we just had a huge fire in the mountains, and I don't know, it's just been on my brain, and I'm like, I need to write about this so people understand. Yeah, oh yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that is a perfect reason to journal and include that in your journal, because sharing information about natural history and unnatural history is super important. And it's the more you can do that in your journal, the more you'll learn too. And then also sharing with people about buffalo grass is so important. I'm actually working on we're launching a webinar next week. U of A, Tumamoc is we're one of the main people on the Bighorn, and we're opening with buffalo grass.
Yeah, I signed up for that.
Yay! I'm behind. I'll be the one running things behind the scenes, so you won't see me. But thanks for signing up.
Oh, yeah.
That's wonderful, and congratulations on doing your first sketch. I really like your sketch. Actually, the running ink kind of made it look cool.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. So I'll play around
So
with
now
it.
you see, yeah, there's lots of techniques and things, so you can keep playing with that. Well done. Buffalo grass, boo.
Yeah.
Let's see, Christine.
Okay. So let's see if this, okay, let me get, oh, I can't see myself, but you guys can see.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Nice.
So I tried the Landscapito. That was a good exercise for me. It's always been daunting for me to even think about how to do a landscape. So I really enjoyed, when you said it was relaxing yesterday, I was nodding my head, no, it can't be relaxing. So it turned out to be just a sweet process to do that. The tree was interesting, but the shape really helped me. You know, it's a big cottonwood that was there in the front. And at first I kind of made it look like a ponderosa pine or something. I was kind of struggling, I think, with my brain, you know, just trying to overthink it. But so that was one thing I did. And then, so it's hot here as well. So I was just sitting in the shade and noticed Say's Phoebe around, and I didn't have binoculars, but it was cool because it came and was perched and foraging very close to me, and I was able to see it thermoregulating with its beak open. And I was thinking about the numerical part of this, and that actually got me thinking about things to observe behavior-wise. So I decided to track time of beak open and beak closed, a very informal, rudimentary. And I do love data analysis. So then I tried to put I tried many different ways to try to capture all of my data, but the best one is the bottom one, which captures the range of open and closed. So it turns out it kept it closed more than open. And I just tried to track the minimum and maximum, or sort of the smaller amount. Anyway, it's hard to see, and it's kind of wacko.
Oh,
but
we can see it. Oh my gosh, I'm completely geeked out. That is so cool. So everybody can see. You don't have to do things all the same way. You don't have to sketch it. You can look for data in different ways and then visualize it as a graph. And it's actually really addictive, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't want to come in, and it's like 102 here, but I had to get back home, so I had to come because I had a little bit of walking to do. So yeah, otherwise I would have stayed.
Well done. I love that. And I'm glad the kind of landscapito thing worked, because and the more you do them, the quicker they'll get and more fun. And it's just keep it small and simple, and then when we add color, it will be even more fun. So that's a lot of fun. Fantastic. Thank you. And you're brave. See, you have a big journal page.
It's true. Yeah.
And I often caution beginners. It's like, don't start with the giant because it's so daunting. I would be completely daunted by a page that big because sometimes I only want to write that much. So well done, well done. Let's see, after Christine, I see Connie at the top, and then who after Connie? Bonnie? I'm kind of going down, I can see. So Connie, then Bonnie.
Okay. I don't know what you can see.
That's perfect.
I had collected a leaf that I had seen outside of a huge garden that I had been visiting. And so I brought it home, and actually I'd seen the berries on the ground first, and then I started seeing the tree. So I brought it home, but I didn't know what it was. It was a California pepper tree. Interesting, I'm at my son's here in California to find out he had one of these out in his front yard. So you learned something that you didn't know. So this is actually the full, I guess I call it a leaf, but yet it has a lot of the spikes off of it. And so I actually drew it in life size. The book is 7 by 10. And the leaves were very smooth. Looked at them very closely. From a distance, you can't see it, but they have all these little lines. And my learning today is to have a magnifying glass. The little lines weren't straight as they appeared with my vision. They actually branched out like little trees at the ends. So that was kind of interesting because I just thought it was lots of little lines, and it's not like a usual little leaf that has varying lines. It was just dozens of little leaves, which I only put on a few of the leaves. I didn't do them all. And then the spacing in between them, I found that very interesting. And of course, the leaves at the base are longer than the leaves at the end. And then I did the what I see. What I see was a very feathery, this is very light and floaty like type leaf when you see it on the tree. Multiple fingers, and it kind of is droopy when it hangs in the tree. Then I wondered why there's so many tree lines on one of these little leaves. I mean, the little leaves is not very big. It's just like maybe a quarter of an inch wide. Most of the way. I didn't put that measurement. I put a couple other measurements. And I wondered what the pepper seeds tasted like. And I noticed the closest leaf is at the base where it hooks onto the main tree. Then that said, it reminded me of a willow tree. Now I did that, what I see, what I wonder, but I went up and did a little book, what I looked up. And when I looked up California pepper tree, my learnings from the book was it's an evergreen. I would have never guessed in 1,000 guesses that it was part of an evergreen family because it has such a normal looking kind of leaf. So that was interesting. I did find that the average height of the tree is 50 feet, which that's not as impressive as the fact it was an evergreen. And I put a little magnifying glass on, it's little, over here that talked about what I saw when I did the leaf blow up.
Oh, nice.
So that was kind of interesting because it something I had seen that struck my attention, and then I found out I have one right here in my own son's own yard. So that was kind of fun, and I did a little frame for the major name. Now all my data stuff is on this page over here that I did earlier in the day, so it's not on this page exactly.
I kind of like that. I like the running down the side like that. It's visually interesting. Also, like that, you didn't put the detail on every leaf, which I think leaflet. I think those are leaflets. That would have made it too busy. Yeah, I love that. And that's not native to North America, is it?
I need to read the book a little more.
Yeah, I would be curious. I don't think they are. I think they might be Australian.
Could be. I didn't pick that up. The other thing I did, and is I started out doing journaling and watercolor of events in life. So I unfortunately feel almost naked because it's just part of the process. So I skipped ahead and threw it on. And this is a sketchbook, so it's not fancy. It's heavy paper, but it's not watercolor paper.
And it did just fine.
And yeah, did very fine. I also, out of curiosity, and some of you will find this really crazy, but I have bought some journal books. So you never really know what you can do. But let me see if I can find one in. Well, here's the strawberry one, which I did in the previous thing. But this is a sketchbook that I got at Ross's, just basic paper. And it absolutely does really well with a splash of watercolor and the pen and all the writings on it. So I just speak for paper. Sometimes you just have to try. And if you find something that works for you, because I really have kind of, for nothing that I want to put on the wall, I love this.
Perfect.
And it's $3.99 for a book. So
yeah, you can't beat that.
So experiment, yeah. It
Nice.
makes me relax too.
When you don't think it's like a $25 journal that
yes
yeah, and that's where I bought some of those beautiful linen handbook journals.
Oh, yes.
And it made me just crazy because I couldn't relax. I was like, oh, like every page cost $1.
yeah. You think it has to turn out so special, but with these cheaper ones, I let it go to the wind, and they come out quite fun.
Great.
So thank you.
Well done. Thank you for sharing that. That's so cool.
Yeah. And I haven't been doing this very long. I got introduced maybe in end of May. So it's only been like a month and a half.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Enjoy it.
I'm looking up real quick if pepper trees are native to California. They're Peruvian.
Okay. Well, that will get added to the thing.
Yeah, you'll want to look that up a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Let's see. And then we had, so Connie, then Bonnie, and then there's 4 other people who raised their hands. So Grace, if you could look and see who raised their hand, and because I can't see it from mine. So, okay, so Bonnie.
Okay, so mine's pretty simple because when I draw these things, I don't know what anything's called. So, but I'm doing something probably sacrilegious to some folks, but I'm trying this on a mini iPad.
Yay!
That I have here, and I also have an iPad Pro, and I do larger drawings on that because I take them after I've done what I want to do with them. They either go into a journal that's digital or into larger artwork. So I've been learning this thing, and so this, whoa, just went away. I use a program called Procreate, and an Apple Pencil, and I finally found a brush that really looks like watercolor. So anyway, here is the little drawing that I did with it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and my notes, not very many notes. So this is right outside of my house. I'll put it back up. I live in a condo, and there's a creek that goes past my house, and I've lived here for 25 years. Want to know how many times I've walked the whole length of the path of the creek? Yesterday. Yesterday was the first time. Mainly because, I want to go to all these exotic places to do art. But it was really fun to do this. And so I went out during our time, and I wrote, sitting along Granite Creek, my backyard. It was 99 degrees. Saw this plant yesterday at 9 a.m. Many of them were open and closed now because of the heat, and I can't figure out what the heck it is. So that will keep me busy for quite a while. Another thought that came up while I was out there had to do with the breeze And I know there's a little formula, you know, if the leaves are moving, it's this speed, and if the, you know, if the branch is bending to the ground, you're in hurricane, things like that. But so that was another one. It's like, oh, well, I want to look that up and figure that out. And also I noticed while I was there that I heard the cicadas humming, and I could hear them. I looked them up once because we sat on my porch and heard these things moving down, you know, the sound moving down the creek, and looked that up, and they actually do it in a sequence. And so as I sat there, I listened and could follow them. Right, you know, I'm right under the trees, so I could hear them go over me.
Have you ever looked up, maybe investigated why they do it in a rolling, passing along kind of thing?
Yeah, it was a while back, so
yeah, that would be fun to
know. Write it down.
Like,
yeah,
why is that?
So the fun for me was just coming up with all the questions. You know, how many things I can observe, but then, you know, my brain and other parts of me says, why, and what is it, and how does that work, and why did it develop that way? So.
And so finding that out and adding it back to your journal. I love the, there's nothing sacrilegious about the, anything is great. Everything is great. We don't pass judgment on what type of people do. And I have so much admiration because I tried Procreate and I'm not very good at it. I don't have the patience to learn it, I guess.
Yeah, give it about 2 years. I'm serious.
Yeah, it's people who are good at it, like you, make it look easy, but that's fantastic. And so I love the idea too. I wanted to remind folks when you said somewhere, and I know that exists, is a great chart for visualizing wind and approximate wind speed, and that would be a great thing to draw your own cheat sheet. So for example, I love to write cloud symbols, but I can never remember what the different cloud names are necessarily. So I made my own cheat sheet for clouds. Yeah. And I keep that in the front of my journal. And same thing for the weather. I sent you guys this, the weather. So now I'm thinking, oh, I want to do the wind speed estimations, because if I'm not at home, I don't have my anemometer. So I have an anemometer here at home, but so if you mentioned the leaves closing up, the plants closing up.
Yeah.
So if everyone, there's a nice little nature note here. It's called nyctinastic, and plants have an ability to move gases through their their vein systems, in the leaves, to make the leaves close up when it's too hot, so that the sun isn't pounding down on them, and then open them up so the stomata can open at night if it's hot, or vice versa. So it's really a amazing thing that they use gases moving through different corridors to move. So well spotted. See, so you learned a lot.
Oh yeah, I did.
Okay, so Grace, who's had their hands up?
Marty has his her hand up.
Hey y'all. Let's see. So for this morning, I started with a fatsia. Pull back. There we go. Leaf. And these are in my yard, so I figured I would just carry on with that. So I did a fresh one, and this way, little dried up dead one. And then after that, this is kind of spread on a couple different pages, but I did the, I have these like 4 of them in, wrong way. It's backwards on Zoom. these guys, there was one plant in my yard, so I sort of did a blind contour of it just because I wanted to be quick. Because if I do it to this level of detail, I would have been out there for 4 hours. And then I asked myself a few questions like, about, well, I did a little writing about like what it smelled like, how they felt, my associations with them. They seem, and I didn't know what the actual name was. It's Fatsia japonica. And they always have seemed very Asian to me. And my mom really liked that sort of aesthetic, and she's deceased now. So it just gave me this nice sort of bittersweet connection with her that was unexpected. And then I did a little close-up of the way that the edges are serrated and the veins connect with like every other serration on the edges of the leaf. So I thought that was really cool, and I wouldn't have gotten to that without getting so close to it. And so it's one of my favorite plants ever since I moved down here, and I have not even really known its full name until today. So that was great.
That is wonderful. So hold up your the first page again with the square with lots of, and just get it up so your leaves are showing. There we go. So notice how Marty did very cleverly, gave it a real 3D effect with a flat surface by simply putting the dark behind part of the other leaf. And what that does is it creates contrast and a negative space behind these two drawings. Would have been great with just the two drawings and no boxes, but there's something about those boxes that makes the whole thing just boing, pop up. And she didn't try to color in the dead leaf 100%, just using simple lines. A great example. Also love all the boxes. Did you draw the boxes first or after?
I drew those first. When I took your first class, my first class with you, and you talked a lot about metadata, and so I've been using your book for my journal so far, and I did a bunch of different experimentations with how I wanted to lay out the metadata. And what I found is that I like to do a spread. Like if I have 2 pages, the location goes on the outer edge. And then I think that's right. Yeah. And then the date goes on the inner edge. So this top bar across here always has the time in the middle. And then if it's on a verso, it goes on the, so that changes location. That's a little moss covered branch that I did some other day. So,
Beautiful.
But this is just, it's fabulous. I've really enjoyed so far this process, and it just takes me out of the expectations that I have of kind of, my own art making, which is another mental thing unto myself. Oh, and then the other thing, I don't want to take up too much time, but I talked to Roseann about this chart that I've been trying to identify how to visually represent birdsong. And so I know so few names of birds like crow, robin, blue jay. But anyway, so I'm drawing what I find is sort of the pattern of what I'm hearing. And I didn't do this today, but what I tried to do today was then listen to the birds that I was hearing and tried to see if I could find them on my chart. So I'm hoping to expand this.
Okay, that's completely cool. Would you send me a copy of that? I think that's awesome.
Sure.
I'm having a really hard time with the visualizing song thing, and I think it's partly because I used to be a birding guide, and I know I can identify birds by ear.
Right.
So it's like that gets in the way. If I didn't know it, I could probably come up with visualizations better, but my brain's already decided what it is and moved on.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. That makes sense.
Hey,
So I guess it's good that I don't know what they are.
It is. I think that really helps you with the visualization. So that reminds us that when we're visualizing things, we should empty our brains.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
That was geek out.
Yeah.
All right. Grace, do you want to call the next hand?
Susie?
Hi. So I'm a real newbie, but let's see. Can you see that? That's the first page. And a rhododendron leaf. And then when I was having my lunch, I have a sycamore tree out front, and there are acorn woodpeckers on it with their back to me. And he was only there a few minutes, but I just stuck him in there. And then I did the leaf. I went outside and picked up, so I can't get any of the green leaves off the tree. They're all up top, but on the ground, on the pavement, I picked up three different leaves, a bigger ones that are completely brown, and then a smaller greenish brown. And when I was picking them up, I saw these two little tiny red bugs on the concrete. So I came back up and looked those up, and then I went back to see if there were more than the two, and I couldn't even find more than two. So, and I looked that up. They're, I think they're clover mines.
Oh,
anyway,
wow.
Then I went into the backyard, and we have this black or chocolate sunflower that's weighted down, and had a fun time doing that. I don't know my flower. I don't remember them anyway, but I looked it up. I have the pistil was dark ends with little yellow styles. So that was fun, and they're very soft to touch them. You can hear the woodpeckers in the backyard, and we have beehives, and so the bees are just flying in and out like they're going to the airport. They're all over the place, which is fun to notice. Yeah, and a truck backing up, I could hear it beeping. And then we live near there's a train whistle blow. I could hear that in the background. And anyway, I had a great time. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well done. Those are great for, newbie. Those look really, really fun, and totally would have said sycamore.
Oh, good.
Yeah, well done.
Good.
Who's next, Grace?
Catherine? So I actually took a photo of my page. I don't know if I could try to share it, see if that works.
Yeah, let me see. I think I need to give you permission. Hold on.
It's not a very exciting page, but.
Let's see.
We could try that. Or I could hold it up.
No, if a photo's great, so. Okay, try it now. There we go.
You see it? Okay, cool.
Nice.
So this is messy. It's one of the things I know I need to work on is just making my writing more legible. So I have a big fig tree outside of my house, and I learned a lot about it. I got so focused on the things I was learning that I didn't do as neat of drawings or as much drawing as I would like to have done. So here's just this was just a continuation of my metadata from this morning with the leaves. I didn't put a lot of details there. So I had this very large fig tree that I inherited with the house I bought a couple of years ago. And I don't know a lot about fig trees, except I know I like figs. And I prune it down every year, but I haven't spent a lot of time trying to figure the whole thing out. And actually it's a grafted tree, so it has 3 different kinds of figs on it. And it's pruned to grow more like a large hedge, although it gets very tall and as wide as my house. The people who actually owned my house, a couple people who put it in, he actually is a plant geneticist and grafted it himself. And actually he was in town the other day, like, I don't know, a few months ago, and he stopped by and actually he explained everything to me about it. He said I could graft more onto it and everything. So anyway, I'm becoming like this was really fun. I learned a lot about figs. So the leaves are beautiful, and I could just actually, I don't know if I can show you. The leaves are all different kinds of sizes. This is a medium. This is not quite as big as they get, but it's really cool because they look very different on the front, on the top, than in the back. In the back, you can see the veins better. So I started looking with my hand lens at the veining, and it's just really complicated. So I started playing around with that, but that's something I want to do a lot more on the drawing of the leaf. The other thing I focused on at first sitting outside is the structure of how the figs come out of the branches. And I noticed that, which I never noticed before, is that with each fig growing, there's a leaf growing with it. And there's a sort of a bracket in the branch, and that is the branch. When I looked it up later, that is the branch. And so I tried to capture that here in my drawing with these. And so the rest of it wasn't intended to be super great looking, but I was just trying to capture that. So I think that might help me understand how to print it better now that I'm looking at that. Because I print it almost to the ground, and the thing gets taller than my house by the end of the season. It's crazy. And the other thing that I learned is, which was sort of like an I wonder thing, when I'm sitting out there, I'm like, I'm a biologist, ecologist, I'm like, duh, it doesn't have flowers. And so it's a deciduous, and it starts with a few leaves kind of popping out, but the fruits come out first. So that's what I thought was the fruit. There are no flowers. I'm like, what is up with that? So I was eating lunch, I was looking it up, and it turns out that the flowers are on the inside. This is not a fruit. This is called a syconium. And inside are the unisexual flowers, and wasps, fig wasps, go inside. For people who know this, then I'm sorry. But so those are all the flowers. On the inside, they're unisex flowers. And I want to draw and eventually paint, because these are beautiful colors. And so that was super exciting to learn. And then what this made me think of is an inside out composite, although it's not quite the same because it's unisexual flowers, but it's like lots of flowers that look like, you know, now this looks like fruit. So I thought of it's like an inside out composite sunflower. So anyway, that was fun. So I'm excited to explore my fig more and get into the colors and stuff. And then as the season goes on, this is the fig that ripens first, and the other 2 figs, one is, I think, either mission fig or black turkey, so it has really pretty colors. And the other one's striped. And so they all kind of ripen as the season goes on. And so it'll be fun to explore this through the whole season into the fall.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
Wow. I'm just blown away. That is so cool. Let's see. So you'll have to unshare your screen now. Or stop share, it says. Perfect. Oh my gosh. Okay. So there's another fabulous example of a learning something, biologist, right? But steps outside her yard and boom, and oh my God, I'm so embarrassed to admit I had no idea those were flowers either. And I love figs. How cool is that? So Catherine, that could be like a year-long project for you, 15 minutes a day doing one little thing on the fig. It's your built-in happy place to have your 15 minutes a day, or 4 or 5 times a week. How cool is that? I'll look forward to seeing further ones. And I want to urge people not to apologize for like messy or whatever. That's your inner critic coming out. So try to give that a slap. I have my handwriting gets really bad the more excited I get about something, you know, I'm like, and then sometimes I can't even read it. So don't worry about that. Journals are for you. So fantastic. Okay, that made me super happy. It looks like Mary Sue has her hand up.
Okay, it's 97 degrees here, but I went ahead and went out to my patio. And because I got this year, for the first year, I started growing vegetables. And I have a little flower garden out front, but it's got space in between, and I was able to plant some vegetables there in between. But I didn't want to go out there because that was too sunny. So on my patio, let's see.
So pull it back a little bit, back toward you.
Well, I wanted to draw a close-up and a landscape. So this is the landscape. And it's just basically all of my, I made it perhaps a little complicated, but anyway, it's where I started, and I wanted all the bits. So I got the beets. I bought those fabric pots, and I planted some beets in the fabric pots, and I grew some butter crunch lettuce, and I harvested the lettuce. But the rest basically are flowers, my little Buddha and St. Francis. And I like to do, when I do something, I also say, what did I learn? I liked your idea of having a space to write things in, because what I was doing was writing them in here. Beets, Buddha, which is fine. But next time I think I'd like to keep it out of the picture. So then I wanted to do a close-up. So a while ago, I found a nest and I saved it. And the nest was on top of my carport, right under the roof of the carport over my car. And I had noticed it, and every once in a while I'd have bird droppings on my car. But I tried, you know, that's fine. I don't want to disturb the birds. But one day I went out there. They were mourning doves, and they flew away. And I thought, oh no, I hope I didn't scare them. But what can I do? My car. This is my car port. And they flew away, and they never came back. And it was kind of sad. So I left it alone. I just didn't do anything with it until about a month ago. I go, they're not coming back. So I kind of knocked it down. And I put in a plastic bag because I want to show my students when I go back to school. But there were some eggshells in there. But I have a feeling that they left before the birds were hatched, because I never heard the babies. So that's what I wrote down. The question was, why do birds abandon their nest with eggs? So I looked up Google, and I found that birds will abandon their nests if they're disturbed or harassed. And less obvious human visits can leave a path or sense, I don't know, I think, but anyway, they were being harassed because I was getting to my car, which I couldn't do anything about it, but anyway, but that was something I learned, is that I have a hummingbird nest out and back. I just remembered that I was going to bring him eventually. So, so anyway, this was my drawings.
Wow, those are fantastic. I love like the measurements and the observations about the nest. It's hard to disturb doves. They tend to nest in urban environments. So I bet it was something else. I doubt it was you. Really? We have doves build a foot from our door, and they don't move. They don't care. Could have been something else. Could have been heat. if it's been a hot spring and literally could have been too close to the roof and just maybe cooked the eggs. I don't know. But yeah, I don't want you to think you chased them away. Doves are just pretty ubiquitous. Plus doves they can have 4 or 5 clutches.
Okay. Well, maybe they wanted to lay their nest somewhere else, but I do have a bird feeder out front, and it's mostly for the little house finches. But the dove birds will come on the grass and pick out what the finches throw out. So that's kind of fun to watch them.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Doves can make they make good subjects for learning to draw live birds because they stay on the ground. Sometimes they're pretty slow and they stick around. So they're my favorite bird, but there's lots of them and they're easy to draw if you want to practice. We had a question. Ellen says, I noticed at least the last 2 sharers measured in metric, and do I. Most of the time I will do metric, mostly because it's more precise, more quickly and easy to write. So you can do 11 millimeters instead of 0.458 inches or something like that. So metric is just you can be more precise with millimeters, centimeters. My clear ruler has both, but it's just a little easier to use the metric. And then sometimes I'll just do inches, especially when it gets bigger. I'll do feet, and then sometimes I'll do meters. So I guess I mix and match. You can do whatever you like, just as long as it's. And another fun way to measure. I've seen some people who they'll write that a tree, instead of saying it's 60 feet tall, they'll draw a picture of themselves if they're a 6-foot person and say it's 6 of me. It's just a fun way to do it. So lots of ways. Thank you so much for sharing those, Mary Sue. Those were really fun and well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done. Who wants to jump in? No, it's like silent. Anyone want to? Okay, so okay, Diana, and then Sai, and then Carmen.
Okay, I took a different perspective, and I live where I have a vision of adjacent hills that I've wanted to sketch forever. So I wanted to look at proportion and didn't worry much about everything else. So I concentrated on trying to get the proportions right using the pen measurement and visualizing, and sketched it to see if I couldn't get the various parts of what I see on the skyline. So I don't know if it can be seen.
Let's see. So you're missing your camera is more to your, yeah, there you now up a little. Okay, great.
So it's just simple in pencil, and I noted what I'm looking at, and I redid the metadata elsewhere on the page. Yeah. So that I tried to start to form that habit, but it was really just an exercise in trying to get the proportions right, because I've been staring at that skyline ever since we moved here 10 years ago and always wanted to sketch at least a portion of it. So that's really, I didn't ask any questions because I know the skyline so well. I haven't got that far, I guess, but I did find out that using the pen to help you visualize proportions helped a lot.
Great. What did you measure against? Some known, like one part of the hills, so you could count how many of that part?
Yes, I held up the pen and said, okay, the hills are that far or that far, however much it was, and then translated that down to both linear and vertical, because there's about 6 different things from between me and the top of the hills.
Nice. So just staring at them that long, you probably, notice things you might not have noticed before because you were really, really seeing them in order to draw them.
Correct.
Great, that's fantastic. So you could ask questions like, so what are those hills, what's the geology of those hills? Or what's the dominant plant community? And those are all things, you could make those hills a real study in your journal from here on out.
I'm a pilot. I live on a dirt airstrip, and I've flown over those hills many, many times. So I know exactly what's up there looking down.
Ooh, you could sketch that.
Not when I'm flying, no.
No, but you can make a mental snapshot.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And then use Google Earth to remind you.
Yes.
So who else knows about, using Google Earth? So they've swapped it. They're in the process of kind of dumping the app, and they're making it all on the browser, and it's actually working pretty cool. And use Google Earth to get new views of the places that you're visiting, and it'll be really fun. You can do a little box of an aerial of your space, and obviously you're not going to do it while you're flying, but you can come back and just go into Google Earth and see some really cool stuff. Well done. I love that. Love that. So let's see, Debbie, it's Debbie, right? No. Oh,
I'm not sure, but I do want to ask you a question.
Sure.
It's not related to what we're doing, but what is the tattoo on? Yeah, the tattoo. Yeah, on your right arm, I guess it is. Oh, okay, we were trying to ponder that out. It's meerkat? Was it cheetah? Cheetah? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We were in Kenya together last year, so.
Nice. Yeah, I've loved cheetahs since I was about 8 years old.
Oh, cool.
And I was lucky enough to get to work with some folks in cheetah conservation in Kenya. So very cool. They're great creatures. So wonderful. Thank you for both for that. I can't remember. Sai, you wanted to?
Yeah, hi. I'm really tired because I was up past my bedtime last night. So I did my sketching this morning while I still had energy. So during the break, I mindlessly crammed lunch down, which I shouldn't have done, but I sketched the pine cone that went with that tree, and took some photographs of some of the dead branches and the live ones so that I can go back, and I have pine cones in 4 different stages so that I can look at them. So I did that, but I took the time instead, because you said use all the senses, and went and sat on the porch that's actually on the street, and just listened to hear what I could hear. I was sorry to do that because there's so much traffic noise. But I also was playing with, I have lots of weather apps on my phone, but I have no anerometer, whatever that meter thing is. But I was looking between 2 different apps to see what their differences were in terms of the temperature, what it feels like, humidity, and all of that. And then as I could feel over the 2 hours, I could feel the humidity coming back in, just watching what they were doing. And so I was noting that in the journal, what the reading was and what it felt like. But, I also don't like numbers, and you said to count, so I figured I would do that. I was reminded of something. I used to live in Maryland on 5 acres, and over the course of 8 years, I never paid attention to the sequence of years, but I did notice while I lived there that one year there would be an overabundance of frogs. And then another year there would be an overabundance of spiders. And then another, there would be an overabundance of snakes. And I wish now that I had kept track of the sequence, because I bet there is a relationship between those. But this year here in South Carolina, we have an overabundance of flies, and I don't know why. But as I was sitting in my backyard trying to see if there was anything I had any interest in drawing, I noticed that the landlady had a statue of St. Francis in the back. And I have never seen such a scowling St. Francis in my life, because you said really see things. So I'm like looking, And I was like, I don't like this St. Francis at all. He looks absolutely pugnacious. So, but I noticed the flies, and they're on my hand and they're on my knee. And so I said, okay, well, let's look at the fly. And I never noticed that flies actually like have different colors and different sizes, and maybe it's mating season because they were chasing each other. I did get to enjoy the airplanes. We've got a small local airstrip, and I love little airplanes. So I got to listen to them doing their little whatever flight pattern overhead. But you know, motorcycles and all that other kind of stuff. The road noise depends on which way the wind is blowing, because there's a major road some distance away I normally don't hear, but the winds today are from the south-southwest, and that's where downtown and the traffic is. So it's noisy and not very nature-like right now. But it was a really good exercise in not doing the looking so much until the flies showed up, but listening to what was there. And I discovered the chit, chit, chit noise things, cardinals. So that was fun. So thank you.
Fantastic.
It's a
I
cool
love
exercise.
it. It's always fun to try something different and to expand your what you think you can do doing something. So the listening was great. You know, even if it was through traffic. You know, we here in Tucson, our town place is right in the middle at the two of the busiest streets in town. But in my backpack, I can get pretty far away from the sound, except when the hospital helicopters come in. So let's see, we had, who else raised their hand? No, no one else? Oh, Carmen, yes.
We live in the Ponderosa Forest in Prescott, so I went down to the bottom of our property and drew my favorite tree, which is a craggy old oak tree. If you can see that. Is that visible?
Yeah, hold it back away from the computer a little bit, and now up a tiny bit. Perfect.
And we had a heavy snowfall. I think it was our last snowfall this year that did a lot of damage up here, and so it broke a big branch off this tree. And I've just always liked this tree. It has a big hole in the top of it, which I thought would be a good place for a beehive or somebody's home, but I've never had the nerve to go and look inside and see if there's anything in there. And then I did another one. This is between two properties, and that plant there, that weed, is what was new to me, which is a Palmer's amaranth, I guess it's called, and it's an invasive species. But it's you can eat it. I guess you can eat all parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very competitive.
Where are they from? Because amaranth was a very important foodstuff for Mesoamerican people. So I'm suspecting it's from southern north, like central.
It's native to, well, it's all over the South U.S.
Yeah, pigweed, they call it pigweed. Yeah, it's all over the world, it's according to this. But yeah, amaranth was an important food plant early. Those were great notes. I noticed you were nice and text heavy. And did you learn anything new about the places that you were looking?
Well, I wrote down all the birds that I didn't hear in the area because it was the heat of the day. It was 97 degrees, so it was very silent outside.
I bet, yeah.
And I guess the new thing I learned was about the amaranth.
Nice.
And it's between our property, and it's kind of on the cusp of two properties, and neither one of us have cut it down.
Yeah, you might want to grab it before they seed. It's a prolific seed producer. You can eat the seeds. You can pop them like popcorn, I understand.
I know the birds like it, I think.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And Jan. I think you need to unmute.
Okay, sorry. I'm in Tucson and I went outside for a little while just to observe. And I do that frequently, but I found that writing down what I was seeing made me realize how many different species of birds are actually in our yard. I mean, I saw curved-bill thrasher, house finches, house sparrows, woodpecker, verdins, and an Abert's towhee, all within the span of about 10 minutes or so. So I guess what I learned from that is that if I write stuff down, I will pay more attention to what's around and about. And so I did, we have a berm. Tell me when.
A little bit closer. That's good. Great.
Okay. So I wrote down all the birds, but, and this is supposed to be a curved-bill thrasher. I did a little better job when I came inside. I was just getting too hot. And then we have a berm that I kind of drew in, and we plant almost all native plants with the exception of this thing, which is a Cleveland sage. And I did a close-up, oops, wrong side, a close-up of these double flowers. And I always thought these were the seed pods. They're not. They're dried flowers, and the seed pod is this teeny tiny little thing up at the top. So that's it.
Fantastic. So learned something about that sage, really cool. And thrasher, I totally recognize it as a thrasher. Don't, and it's.
This part, the bottom one, isn't too bad. I mean, I could tell that's a thrasher.
And that's a great.
But this just looks like an old-fashioned dinosaur type bird.
No worries. It's great to just redo it like you did. 5 or 6 different views. Just keep doing it till you get one you like. I like that approach. It works really well. And birds are hard. I mean, tackling a bird, I think, is really, really among the hardest things to get right. You get one thing off, you know, the bill or the eye in the wrong place, and it's just hard to do. So well done for tackling that, and for going outside when it's 105.
The pool temperature was 91.
Oh, so it's now bad. In Midtown, we're up to 105 right now. So.
Yep, that's where I am, 105.
Yep. So well done. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. And did I see anyone else want to jump in? I'm not seeing hands. Oh, there we go, Betsy. Unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I registered for this class on Thursday or Friday morning, I can't remember. So I didn't have a whole lot of supplies. So I had to dig around here at home last night and see what I could find, and found one of these Ride in the Rain books that I had taken on my Grand Canyon journey last year or a couple of years ago. Anyway, that's my journal for today. Just to give you a little bit of background, I went out in the backyard. Last year, I have 1 acre here, but I haven't fenced in probably about, I don't know, 4,000 square feet here. And I had my entire yard scraped clean and brought in new topsoil. And I live on a rock. Literally, if I plant a plant, I have to get a pickaxe out and dig the rocks out in the limestone and everything to get enough room to put something in. So I put in new topsoil. And then I was really interested in what Michelle was saying about the buffalo grass, and it kind of confused me for a minute because I planted buffalo grass, a combination of that and curly mesquite and blue grama. So I planted my sunny space in native grass, and I got it from Native American Seed Company, and they have a whole section of alien plants, of which that invasive buffalo grass is listed in this book. I went to get it just to refer to it. So that was interesting to me. I didn't know that. And anyway, when bringing in the dirt, I don't know if this is what did it because it was from another location, obviously, or planting the new grass, I got all kinds of wild things that came up in my yard this spring. I planted the grass in mid-September last year, and it's doing great. I had tons of wildflowers, different things, and I have in my yard still something called a buffalo burr nightshade. Have you heard of that? Buffalo burr nightshade. So it's a nightshade. And I have a large common sunflower, which is between 10 and 12 feet tall. I never expected it to get that high, and I have several other ones. And as a result of those plants and a couple of other things, my yard is just, plus I had planted native plants in the front part, in front of the grass, the new grass. So I've just got all kinds of new things in my yard that are exciting. So I took my little notebook, which is very small, and drew this first plant down here. I don't know if you can see that. I know there's a lot of
hold it closer to the camera. There.
Okay. So this is over here, the buffalo burr nightshade, which the leaves look a lot like a jigsaw puzzle. And the flowers are yellow, and the seed pod is now just covered with burrs. And all along the stem are burrs and thorns. And it is a weed, and I have 3 of them, but they are attracting huge numbers of large bumblebees, which I just really loved. And I tried to draw one, but I couldn't quite get that because they're so moving around so much. So anyway, when I looked closely at the flowers, I noticed that they were made in a star shape on the inside. So I looked that up when I came back, and we have a really nice resource here called Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in Austin. And on their site, I read about this plant. I hadn't really researched this plant. It says these plants get to 1 foot tall. I can tell you, mine are probably close to 4 feet tall. I think it's the new topsoil, and they're not used to growing. They're used to growing in no soil practically. So that's interesting, and it described the plant well, and I learned some stuff about it, and I hadn't researched it yet until today. And then on the sunflower, I drew the sunflower. I don't know if you can see this. Let's see if I can turn it right. And also the seed. And one of the things that has happened, which I've had a few in the past, but nothing like this time this year, the lesser goldfinches are just swarming this sunflower, which has been kind of delightful to me because, and they're eating the seeds out of the sunflower. So that's just really exciting. And I did not attempt to draw one because I don't know how yet. So anyway, those are the things I saw. Also a Texas spiny lizard, Carolina chickadees. We have black-chinned hummingbirds. I did have a hummingbird nest, but that's gone now. Titmice, cardinals, painted buntings, and we have painted buntings here, and I don't know if anybody else has them, but they're absolutely stunning birds. And most of the males I noticed have already started to leave and go back, but the females are still here. And while I was sitting here a moment ago, I saw a fox on the other side where I jumped up and took a picture through my window of the fox in my neighbor's yard. So those are the things I observed today. I finally had to move when the fire ants started biting me on the foot because I had my flip-flops on. Anyway, that's my first attempt to ever draw anything or sketch anything. So that was my
I could
That's
tell
my journey.
I could tell immediately that those were nightshade flowers. So you focused on the right shapes, and that was great because that's the shape of Solanaceae flowers. That's perfect. So well done. And just
And there were buds in there as well. There were buds, and then there were seed pods. I'm assuming those are seed pods, even though my resource didn't tell me that. They've closed and they're tight and they're just covered with thorns. So I think those are probably the seed pods. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if no one else is going to share, then I can give a short talk about kind of get a head start on our color section tomorrow. So we can sort of get going with that. Color, I'm not going to go deep into color theory, but I could, if that's okay with you guys, but I don't want to cut anyone off if there's anyone else who wants to share, because that's important. So no hands, okay. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and we'll get a head start on this kind of 5 color system that I've developed as a, can't remember now who was it, mentioned that they've been using my color set and that it works well, and I can explain why. So let me jump to the camera here and get a little head start on the color. Did that come through, Grace?
Yes, it did.
Okay, so it's a little glare-y. All right, so I recommend for just starting out, if you don't want to spend a bunch of money, to go with just a few colors that you can actually mix to create any kind of color, any color you are going to want to use in a nature journal. Of course, there's tons of beautiful and wonderful colors, and I can show you some examples later. But what this is based on is the triad, the blue, red, yellow idea that those 3 colors can create all of gradation of colors. And I call it cyan, magenta, yellow because I think that a lot of people, and John Muir-Laws is one of them, kind of feel like red is not quite a primary color, because you can make red from magenta and yellow, but you can't make magenta pretty well. So that's just, you know, esoteric color theory, so we won't worry about that too much. I use what's called transparent lifting watercolors, and watercolors come in different, lots of different, just like species, they come in lots of different qualities and characteristics. So transparent means that when you paint it, you can see through it. So if you draw a black line and I paint it over this, I'll be showing you tomorrow, you can see the black line through it. A more opaque watercolor would obscure the line more. So, and they're just, they've got more pigment base and a different type of color base that makes it more opaque. So I like transparent because I find them more vibrant and they're easier to mix. And you don't have to think so hard about like mixing opaque colors and transparent colors. You can end up with what's called mud, or just a yucky color that's not, it just goes flat. It's not very pretty, if you will. And so again, I just like to keep it simple. This is the way I do it, and it's not the only way by a zillion times. There's so many wonderful ways to do this, and I'll put a resource up. There's a woman who has a website. She's an Australian artist, Jane Blundell. I'll put that up in a bit. And if you want to go deep into color theory, she's just fabulous, but it's a rabbit hole. So I also use colors. So colors are either staining, meaning you put it on the paper and it's going to permanently stain that immediately. It's just not going to come up. The lifting watercolors, you can paint it on and you can actually lift it up with a brush or even your thumb before it dries. And even after it dries, you can add a little water sometimes and lift it most of the way off the paper. So not as staining. And I like those personally because they're more forgiving when you make a mistake or blork out of the place you're trying to color, and you can quickly lift it off or change the color. And then, so the three colors I use are, for the blue, the cyan. Those of you who want to kind of geek out on colors, if you know anything about color process printing, it's called CMY and then K for black. So that's what is mixed when magazines and books are printed at the printer. So that's why I use that nomenclature. So for my cyan, I use, my favorite blue is manganese blue, which Daniel Smith now makes one called manganese blue hue. It's a lovely sky color that mixes gorgeous, bright secondary colors and tertiary colors. So when you mix the primary colors, 1, 2, or 1 and 3 yellow, that's a secondary color. And then when you add, get farther down and produce a hue that's more blue or more green or more yellow, those are tertiary colors. But don't worry too much about that. Primaries and secondaries, you can get a little bit too precious about it. You just need to know that yellow, blue creates greens, and we can play with those to get different hues. Then I add burnt sienna and then an indanthrone blue. And you'll see that I called that a warm blue is because I tend to use colors that are what's called on the cool side. There's cool blues, there's warm blues, there's cool yellows, warm yellows. You don't have to get deep into that. But the reasons will become apparent when we're coloring tomorrow, that when you mix certain warmer blues in, it darkens things and makes it appear to recede in the background. So you might use a warmer blue for, say, mountains in the far background, and lighter blues for something in the foreground. So the other reason I love indanthrone blue is you add indanthrone and burnt sienna together, and you can make everything from beautiful gray to deep, deep black. It's like magic. It's really cool. And then the other fun thing is you mix your 3 primaries, and you get a beautiful brown, and all shades in between, depending on the more you mix. So the magenta I prefer is I use quinacridone rose, and I use a yellow called, well, I think it used to be called chrome yellow, maybe aureolin yellow. It's actually a yellow that it's neutral. It's neither cool nor warm, and I like it because it just is bright and beautiful and mixes nice colors. A lot of studio artists frown on aureolin yellow, and I'll write these down for you, because it's considered slightly fugitive, meaning it fades over time when exposed to light. But since it's in a journal, I'm not so worried about that. And I just love it. It's lifting. I found it really hard to find a yellow that is bright, neutral, and lifts. There's lots of yellows. There's a gazillion yellows. So anyway, those are what we're going to be working with tomorrow. If you don't have these, don't worry about it. We'll see what you have, and I'll have you be practicing, like, okay, like let's paint up these dots, and then I'm going to have you try mixing a bright green, and I'll have you try mixing an orange and a purple, and try a brown. And then if you have something that can mix to make black, we'll try that too, with whatever you have. And if you don't want to play with color, don't worry about it. You can follow along too. But we'll pretty quickly jump into how to get some fun colors going. You don't have to use indanthrone blue and burnt sienna to get the black. You can use other blues In fact, I've been playing, well, let me show you sort of how mine works. So my little mini paint kit here, let's see, get this a little closer. I'm going to change the exposure here. There we go. So there's the indanthrone, the burnt sienna, the manganese blue, and my magenta, the quinacridone rose. And then I put 2 yellows in mine. It's the same yellow. So then I use this for mixing because it gets really gnarly. And then I leave this virgin when I want pure yellow. So that's just a fun little kit. But, you know, I've been experimenting. You can do all sorts of ways of approaching color. I was experimenting with these natural earth pigments and to see if I could get similar mixing qualities with ochres and earth tones. And just by way of showing you, let me see if I can get this to focus. So this is a red ochre, a yellow ochre. It's not quite focusing. Yellow ochre. This is a lapis lazuli. That is actually a lapis pigment. And then this is called Mayan blue. And then this is another red ochre. And then I experimented, and sure enough, I can get a really interesting green by mixing this blue and that yellow. I can get really beautiful grays and blacks by mixing the red ochre. And the only thing that surprised me was I can't get green out of the lapis. And those of you who are totally into kind of color theory and fun stuff, lapis lazuli has been one of the earliest blues used in painting, and it's tons of fun to use, but it's pretty pretty non-forgiving color. But just to show you that there's tons of ways to do it, when I use my earth pigments, I get a very old-fashioned looking page and palette rather than the bright colors I get out of these are synthetic colors. By the way, if you're not used to doing watercolor, these are made from lots of really, really toxic stuff. So don't lick your brushes. don't lick your fingers after doing. I mean, there's chromium. There's the quinacridones are super toxic. Don't dump your water from your painting out in the wild. Bring an extra bottle to take it home with. There's stuff in here you just don't want to be putting out. And don't think that earth pigments are all happy and light either. They're made from minerals, which can have interesting stuff in them too. So just be cautious. But we'll get into that more tomorrow, but we got a little bit of a head start, so we can jump right in with. So who's going to try coloring? Who's got some of their own paints and things they can play with? Okay, good. Well, most of us will be jumping right in. The rest of you can kind of learn and see whether you think you want to try colors or not. You certainly don't have to. There's loads you can do with just pen and ink and pencil, and take that. Let me go. Let's see. I'm going to show real quick. Go over tomorrow's schedule. So. 1 p.m. Arizona Pacific time tomorrow. We'll start again. And remember, it's a new Zoom address. So I sent those out this morning again. So we'll spend a couple of hours. I'll show you some more examples and demonstrate mixing colors quickly. Also, if you haven't played with water brushes, I'll show a little bit about how to use water brushes, which are really convenient and great for field sketching. And I'll do some samples from the stuff I drew today, and I'll have you try some on your stuff too. So if you want to do some drawing in the morning to color in later, please do that. If you want to spend your Sunday morning doing a few more sketches, do that. Got plenty of time. So that should do it for today. I'll hang around for a little bit for additional questions. And thank you guys. This was a fun day. I'm blown away by all the pages and fun things everyone observed. It was really, really fun.